Hey there, and welcome. In the accounting world, there used to be something called busy season. But let's be real, for a lot of us now, it just feels, well, infinite. If your firm feels like it's stuck in a sprint that never, ever ends, then you're in the right place. We're going to break down exactly why that is, and more importantly, what you can do about it. So, let's start with the big question, right? Why does it feel like busy season just never ends? That's the heart of it. That old predictable rhythm that firms used to run on, it's pretty much gone. Now it's just this constant flood of client demands and things getting more and more complex. So what's really going on here? This quote it hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? That predictable rhythm wasn't just a nice to have. It was the entire foundation for how firms managed everything. And now that it's gone, all the old ways of doing things are just crumbling. And look, this is super important. This isn't a personal failure. It's not about your team. It's a massive industry-wide shock to the system. So let's just go ahead and give this thing a name, shall we? We're talking about the infinite busy season. And this isn't just some temporary spike in work. It's the new normal. It's relentless. And that finish line just seems to keep getting pushed further and further away. And frankly, it's burning good people out. And this really shows you the before and after, right? We've basically traded these predictable, manageable sprints for a marathon with no water breaks. It's brutal. And the real thing we've lost here isn't just the downtime. It's that crucial space to breathe, to think strategically, to plan, to actually improve things. Instead, we're just reacting all the time. Okay, and if you take away just one thing from this first part, let it be this. If you're feeling this pain, it is not because your team isn't good enough. I promise you, it's not an expertise problem. It's an execution problem. Think of it this way. Your firm's operating system is trying to run brand new software on 20-year-old hardware. It's just not going to work. And you can see the symptoms right here. Do any of these sound familiar? Your senior staff is completely overloaded. Your junior staff is stretched way too thin. You've got delays because of disorganized documents, constant battles over what's the number one priority, and the whole team is just always in catch-up mode. See, these aren't signs of a bad team. They're classic symptoms of a system that is under a ton of strain. All right, so how do we actually fix this engine? Well, we're going to focus on 4 really strategic levers. Think of them as specific pressure points where making one small, smart change can have a massive impact. Let's dive in and see how something like strategic outsourcing can help you pull these levers. Okay, lever number 1, inventory reconciliation. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds kind of small, right? But trust me, this is a classic bottleneck. When it goes wrong, it creates this toxic ripple effect that messes up everything downstream, from your financial reports all the way to tax filings. So the fix here is all about having a solid process. When you create a dedicated workflow for this, maybe by outsourcing it, you start catching those little discrepancies super early. And what's the result? Way less rework. Month-end and year-end closes get shorter. And suddenly, everyone else has clean, reliable data to work with. You're basically stopping the problem right at the source before it can spread. All right, so now that your data is clean, we can move on to the next lever. And this one tackles what I like to call the silent killer of all deadlines, tax documentation. We all know the real struggle here isn't usually the complexity of the tax code itself, right? It's the absolute chaos of chasing down disorganized client information. The solution? It's actually pretty simple in concept. You move quality control all the way to the front of the line. Imagine organizing and validating everything before the prep work even begins. Your team gets to skip that endless, frustrating back and forth and can just focus on the high-value work, not hunting for paperwork. Okay, so you've got clean data, you've got organized documents. Now you can finally start thinking about growth. But that brings us to lever number 3, which tackles a huge barrier: capacity. We all know local hiring is getting tougher and more expensive by the day. So the question is, how do you scale your firm without just scaling the stress and the burnout? Well, this is where the offshore advantage really comes into play. It's pretty straightforward. You're tapping into a global talent pool of skilled professionals. This gives you incredible flexibility to scale your team up during peak times and then scale back down. You reduce costs, sure, but the most important part, you protect your core onshore team from being stretched to that breaking point. And once you have that newfound capacity, you can pull our final lever. And this one is all about getting your best people, your senior staff, out of the weeds and into those really important strategic client conversations. Because let's face it, High-value advisory work just can't happen when your top talent is buried under a mountain of prep work. So, by delegating or outsourcing the heavy lifting, all those detailed tax projections and scenario modeling, you free up your senior leaders to do the things that only they can do, things like building deep client relationships and delivering high-level strategic advice. And that, right there, is how you make your most valuable, most profitable services truly scalable. Okay, so we've talked a lot about internal improvements, which is great. But at the end of the day, what really matters is how this impacts your clients, right? They might never know how you're doing it, but I guarantee you they will absolutely notice the results. So what does this upgrade feel like for them? Well, suddenly they're getting faster turnaround times. They're getting fewer annoying requests for missing information. The deliverables they get are more accurate and polished. But you know what the biggest change is? They start getting proactive advice. Because for the first time in a long time, your team has the breathing room to actually think ahead for them. Now, of course, hearing all this probably raises a few questions, and that's totally normal. So let's just tackle the two biggest concerns people usually have when they even start to think about this stuff. Okay, this is the big one, right? The number one fear. But will we lose control? That worry that if you hand work over to someone else, you're going to lose oversight and the quality is going to suffer. Well, what's funny is that the reality is often the exact opposite. To outsource effectively, you're actually forced to untangle all your messy internal processes. You have to create a clear, streamlined system with defined review checkpoints, so you don't lose control. In fact, you gain a ton of clarity and even better oversight.
All right, and here's the other big question, the one every single leader thinks about. Does this mean I'm replacing my in-house staff?
No, not at all. Let me be really clear about this. This is not about replacement. It's about elevation. It's about getting your amazing, skilled team off that hamster wheel of repetitive tasks so they can finally focus on the strategic, client-facing work that grows the firm and grows their own careers. So let's just bring this all home. The old way of working? It's broken. And again, not because your team is failing, but because the entire industry has changed under our feet. To really succeed, to thrive in this new reality, you can't just patch the old system. You need a modern operating model. So that leaves us with one final question for you to think about. Is your firm's operating model built for yesterday, or is it built for tomorrow? Are you going to keep putting band-aids on a system that was designed for a world that doesn't exist anymore? Or are you going to build a new one, designed to win the future? Because look, the infinite season, it's here to stay. The only choice you have is whether you're going to just survive it or if you're going to master it.